Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host, Maqbool, with you at PTV World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at the developing situation between India and Pakistan, post, of course, what has happened earlier this month with reference to the kind of Indian aggression that we saw, and, of course, Pakistan's befitting retaliatory response, in the aftermath of which we have seen that after a ceasefire has been brokered with the mediation of the US, we've seen that Indian rhetoric and aggressive posturing towards Pakistan still continues, and that's important, particularly in the baseless and false accusations that India puts forward. So, of course, in terms of what Pakistan needs to put forward are the facts and evidence that it has done so in the past and will continue to do so, for which the Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has also formed a very high-level delegation led by the former Foreign Minister Mr. Pitafi, who's going to be taking this stance to different world capitals and making sure that everybody understands and knows what the real picture is, and, of course, putting India's false propaganda to an end and putting forward facts based on evidence in the ways that India is involved in state-sponsored terrorism and terror networks and activities within Pakistan and the region, and, of course, in the ways that Indian lies need to be called out on, particularly when it comes to Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and the baseless allegations against Pakistan, which, of course, resulted in such an aggression taking place that posed a threat to regional peace and security. This is important in terms of the way that this narrative is going to be highlighted, and then the ways that the world capitals are going to be then taking a look at not just Pakistan's geopolitical positioning and stance, but also in the ways that they're going to be interacting with India moving forward. And, of course, the impact has been seen immediately post the ceasefire, but whether or not that is going to be a sustainable move forward, particularly in terms of the kind of economic ties that many countries enjoy with India, of course, remains to be seen. And so the way that Pakistan is going to be presenting this stance is extremely integral and vital at this point. So we're going to be taking a look at what that means, what this high delegation is going to achieve, and what sort of asks and evidence is going to put forward to the international community to take a look at the picture, and how must we approach them to make sure that they're cognizant of what's going on and they understand that it's relevant to regional peace and security, and they take appropriate action. So this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst Farrukh Pitafi and Raja Faisal, and we've also been joined online by former Ambassador Mr. G.R. Baluch. Thank you very much, Ambassador Saab, for being with us and being part of the discussion. And this, of course, is very, very important as we move forward. Farrukh, I'll take your perspective first with reference to what we have seen and in the ways that Pakistan has been able to put forward this narrative, and, of course, also make sure that they engage the diplomatic community while we were, of course, experiencing this conflict situation with India. Of course, it's even more so important now that we're able to put that forward and sustain it. What is the main thing that we need to remember when we take this stance forward and present it to world capitals?
Right, Sana, thank you very much. I think that it is very important to remember that when it came to Banyan al-Masus, the fact was, and it literally means unbreakable wall. So our narrative is also concrete, right? It is very solid. Why? Because it wasn't Pakistan that jumped the gun. It wasn't Pakistan that 1 minute Pahalgam happens, the next minute you hear them suspending IWT and then issuing deadlines, not even deadlines actually, immediately taking action. India's biggest failure, and perhaps that's why Indian side is still clueless, right? And it is clueless because it keeps on thinking that perhaps they were winning, and somehow all of a sudden their president, their prime minister, snatched the defeat from jaws of victory. That wasn't so, right? Usually countries actually get carried away by their own propaganda. The fact is that the reason why India had to face all this was that the world actually saw it for what it was. Get any incident in a place, don't answer the security lapse questions, don't hold anyone accountable, only just start issuing the threats and then attack Pakistan. So whenever you do that, world community usually stands with the other side. So Pakistan's case is very clear. One, remind them that they haven't even apprehended the actual culprits, the 4 or 5, 6, or the story keeps on growing, assailants who might have actually carried out whatever they had done. And then their own security lapse was immense. And this expectation of India that the world is going to tolerate whenever India is going to actually externalize its internal failures, That is something that we can actually tell to the world. And I don't envy the Indian delegation that is going abroad, because we used to have similar kind of situation. Countries actually find themselves, if they do something wrong, in a doghouse. India, by virtue of actually destroying its credibility within few days, right? That is something that will not be received well by the Western or any country. And whosoever is going abroad, they will be offered tea, they will be offered comforts, but they will not be properly listened to. And that's why it seems that the Indian side has resorted to whatever it was doing earlier. For example, they have started, building up these activities in Balochistan, elsewhere, where innocents are being killed. The question is, if you do it, it's okay. If something happens and you blame Pakistan, then that's not okay. This is astounding kind of stuff. So world has finally started seeing what India is doing. Our delegation should have no problem in communicating whatever was happening. All you have to do is ask for facts. If there are no facts implicating Pakistan, the Indian case, amusingly, they keep on actually citing, OBL, they keep on citing Mumbai. They haven't produced an iota of evidence. Even now, they haven't actually apprehended the perpetrators. So what does it tell you? That India has failed, its narrative is extremely weak. And then this argument that somehow Narendra Modi is under pressure. Look, if it is true that 40% of Indians are unbhakts, the blind followers of Modi, whatever he said on television should be enough for them. If there is disagreement, this anger, and it is not limited to television, that means that there is something else that is wrong. For example, that why did you start a war when none was needed, right? So these are things that will help Pakistan, and India's image will continue to decline. We had to face all this after Kargil, and we hadn't actually, before Pahalgam, we hadn't actually recovered from that shock, that mistake after 24 years. So now India will have to do the day.
Absolutely. Ambassador J.R. Baluch has also joined us. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for being a part of the discussion. And I want your take in terms of when we talk about engaging with the diplomatic community and in the ways that Pakistan will be able to put this narrative forward. I want your take first on whether or not we've had any difference in our geopolitical standing post this conflict with India. And secondly, in the ways that we're going to be approaching this issue. We've always had this discussion around the war of narratives and what needs to be put forward and how we take this to the international community and deal with this war front, particularly in light of the disinfo lab and fake propaganda coming out from India. And I understand credibility is lost, but I want your take on how we build our own with evidence and with facts, and what sort of stance and viewpoint and approach in particular is important to keep in mind when we want the world to listen to us.
Thank you, Sana. I think let me just put it in perspective that this, although just 4 days and few hours of conflict, but it has altered the geostrategic map of the region. I'll go to the outcomes little late, and earlier I'll say which were the domains, which were, I'll try to summarize, but there were 4 major domains in which this war was fought. First of all was the narrative. Second was the diplomatic domain. And of course, the military domain was there, and the public domain. Now let's see what we did in the narrative. See, in the narrative domain, I think the way Pakistan's basic narrative and the way it was delivered has written an entirely new chapter in the history of how war narratives, the narrative during the war, have to be put across. And that, I think, I must compliment a interesting and a very creative role played by the ISPR and our other outlets, PTV, and all the media that we have had. But especially, I must say that it just not to really, I'm just not being gracious that way, but it as an analyst, I'm just saying that even if I was sitting not as a Pakistani, but the way the accuracy of depiction of war aligned with the narrative, aligned with the public sentiment, was delivered. And each word, even if you were not a Pakistani, you would say that, yes, this is the truth. And that is the test of any narrative that you listen. Contrast with it, the Indian, right from the word go, that first of all, the Pahalgam itself, the incident, overreaction, without investigation, implicating Pakistan, and then coming up with complete lies that what have they done with Pakistan. So they, in the first few hours of the war, not only that they lost the war, in the few hours of the war, they lost the war of narrative in front of Pakistan. So I think these two, I think, domains Pakistan has really excelled, and it is a pleasant surprise for Pakistans, and Pakistanis need to be complimented. We compliment all those who were involved in this. Now coming to the diplomatic domain, I think again we were up in the game. We were up in the game. Again, I'm not saying as a emotional nationalist Pakistani. If I was sitting in New York, I would have observed, and in fact, I do observe because it was my personal also association with it, being a Pakistani. But since I worked there, so I try to follow the crisis. How does that mission do? It was amazing. Our permanent representative and the entire staff, our ambassador in Washington, they started messaging, meeting people, meeting media, and the test was the first statement coming from the UN Security Council. I think you would have read it, and I have read it, that it was about 3 days that that India haggled because it wanted Pakistan to be blamed for Pahalgam. It wanted some kind of a fictitious Pakistan-backed, so-called Pakistan-backed outfit to be linked with that. But all that was completely nullified because they didn't have anything, and there was no taker at that UN resolution. And that gave a big setback to it. And what we gained, that the first statement is always very important because technically the discussion that they follow in the national security and the UN Security Council are then that statement becomes the basis. So we saw that after that, whatever discussion took place, they were objective, our narrative prevailed. So I think in the third domain also we succeeded with Allah's grace. And most important, not the last, but the prominent was the military domain. We have written new chapters. We have written new doctrines. Pakistan put into practice how a technologically superior hybrid war is actually fought. It has been so far in the books. You must have read articles. I've read several articles and books on the hybrid war, and we keep saying that, oh, there's a hybrid war going to be. But Pakistan not only implemented, but successfully implemented how electronic warfare was used, how system to system was employed in completely blunting this numerical edge of the enemy. That is the test of it. And then we all the three, four components, that is ground, air, navy, space, and of course the cyber. All of the four, they worked in unison, and we were able to really make that punch. I always sort of probably that is I can't help but demonstrate with the punch. This is the punch in the 5 elements, but when you put them together and you punch the enemy, there it goes away. So actually, Pakistan was able to put all those 5 domains or elements of the war and clinch them into a punch, and it was an effective punch, which I think India's status has been changed. Pakistan's status, geostrategic status has been changed. How? I'll come on this. Pakistan, of course, was kind of a balancer in the South Asia, but it was never considered as a mid-level military power. We always said that we have in us, just let the war come and we will test. So now, if you look at different comments that are coming up, not me, I'm saying that Mr. G.R. Baluch or Sana or our friends sitting here on the, but the defense analyst internationally is saying that Pakistan has emerged as the mid-level military power globally. One. Now come to India. India, which was trying to, again, it's not our like hatred for which we are analyzing. We're analyzing as purely professional analyst of military campaigns and wars. India, which was aspiring to become a global military power, has been reduced to the level of even a beginner as a mid-level in terms of its technology, in terms of its command, its even in terms of its strategic approaches to the war, how a war is fought. If a country is aspiring to become a global power, one would assume that they would have. So I think not only that there was a flawed strategic thinking, flawed and erroneous strategic planning, but even its implementation. The best of the best, they thought they have it, but they got them burnt away at a numerically half the size of their force. So I think the major outcome of this, and then of course at the popular level, Indian itself, the population has started to disbelieve the narrative of their own government. So I'll just stop it here and then come back to you when you're done.
Absolutely, Ambassador Saab, and I can hear the joy in your voice that we all share. And of course, it's a proud moment for all of us. Faisal, I'll come to you with reference to what we've seen, of course, in the ways that this dynamic has shifted. But I want your take on when we talk about what has happened immediately after, of course, the ceasefire, and what we have seen historically, what India has enjoyed despite all of these issues that Pakistan has been bringing out in the forefront for quite some time with dossiers and with evidence. But we've seen that despite what has been going on in the occupied valley for decades, the kind of actions we've seen in 2019, and of course a lot of things that are happening within India as part of the Hindutva ideology as well, are a matter of concern. And then of course India's links to terror networks within the region. These are extremely important factors for the world community to consider, but they haven't done so historically, and we've seen that economic ties have been given more importance. So I want your take on how Pakistan is going to be able to leverage this current shift and how we're able to sustain it, and whether or not the world will not eventually shift back to economic relationships, making them the forefront once again.
I think it's Sana, time for the Western countries as well of truth and reconciliation, and reason being, whatever happened, it's in front of them. They have been, of course, noticing, they have been, of course, viewing the Indian channels as well, and Indian channels, while they were, of course, propagating against Pakistan throughout this war, of course, they not only were affecting their credibility within the masses of their own, but of course throughout the world, their credibility as a country and the media as well, both of them, they are shattered right now. That's why we are seeing that they are sending the delegations. And I have always said this, that the blow you remember after the fight, after the bout, that you were supposed to hit your opponent, that blow should be hit on your own face. And India right now, if it is trying to, of course, outreach to the Western world, outreach to the rest of the world about whatever has happened and how it had happened, and why they simply reacted towards Pakistan without any investigation, without any proofs of Pahalgam attack. After that, of course, they came straight away. Now when they are going towards the Western countries, I'm pretty much sure there will be a hell lot of questions which would be asked from the Western countries, because I'm pretty much sure that they are not nincompoops at all. They will, of course, come up with the questions, and the first question should be from the people likes of Shashi Tharoor, who's Oxford graduate, but when it comes to the basic common sense, he lacks it. Why I say this? Because the very first question he would be asked is what happened at Pahalgam attack. When he's finished, saying that, of course, the second question would be, how sure are you that Pakistan was involved in it? What proofs you have? Whether he has some proofs or not, that's another question, and there are huge question marks on Indian media, whatever they were propagating since the 22nd of April. And then the third question would be, what could have been done regarding that? You should have contacted United Nations, you should have contacted, at that time you should have contacted with the Western world, the powerful world, and your friends, but which you didn't do. And then of course straight away you went towards attacking Pakistan. And then what happened after that? You were reciprocated. Of course retaliation was from the other side, because the other side kept on asking for non-biased probe, and even Pakistan was waiting for the truth, but rather than truth, they were getting missiles thrown to the mosques of Pakistans, and then civilians, children as young as 2-year-old, they were of course killed by India. And then Shashi Tharoor likes, they would be asked, if you were in the position of Pakistan, what would you do? What would you do? And the answer would be, well, whatever Pakistan did, that was the befitting reply, and that's how a sovereign state replies to its adversaries, and especially those who are a menace not only for the neighboring countries, but of course the whole region. Why? Because they are the ones who are bringing both of the countries to a verge of a war, a nuclear war, as it is being echoed throughout the world, even on the medias as well. And then Shashi Tharoor likes of people who believe that their Oxford English can impress everyone in the Western countries. By now, I think world has realized that it's not the Oxford University that is impressing the world, but of course the actual professionalism from Pakistan's military, from Pakistan's Air Force, Pakistan's naval forces, and Pakistan's government. The way they kept everything intact. I mean, as Ambassador Baluch has rightly pointed out, I mean, we always used to talk about hybrid war. In hybrid war, of course, media plays its role the way we played. We didn't play a role of a fake news peddler, the one Indians were playing. We were just pushing forward the facts, and world was waiting for the facts. I'm talking about the whole world was waiting for the facts, and the facts they got, they were coming from Pakistan, not from India, because even the Indian population, after that ruthless night of fake news, they had celebrated of course destruction of Pakistan, as if it's a la la land, and as if every Indian, I mean more than 1 billion population of the world is living in the dreamland, and they are being given all of these dreams, and they are actually buying it, and then of course all of these people who are going to the Western countries from the Indians, what can they do? What can they do? What do they have? What do they have in their basket? They have nothing to offer right now. Right? Why? Because diplomatically they were wrong, through media they were wrong, through their military they were wrong, through their investigation authorities they were wrong. Why? Because after doing this whole episode, that's when they go and lodge an FIR and they start investigation of Pahalgam attack. Where were they before? It should have been done before, and the world would be asking for the proof. The mere sort of allegation on Pakistan, number one, and number two, the mere slogans which world has seen before as well, because unfortunately we have actually passed through first 2 decades of this century in which Muslims were being stigmatized, Muslims were being of course victimized of every ruthless activity in the world, and that is what of course Israel is doing. And India thought, if Israel can circulate these kind of pictures in which they are bombing the mosques, and they are bombing the kids, and they are bombing the elderly, and they are bombing the women, and if it's a new normal for Israel, it can be a new normal for India as well. who do they think they're talking to? Who do they think they are attacking on? I mean, have they gone mad? If they ever were a little mad, I think by now they have the taste of their medicine, and for next time they will be, thinking 1,000 times before looking towards Pakistan in this way.
Absolutely. And Farrukh, you can add to this discussion, but I also want your take on when we talk specifically about what delegation is being formed. We've spoken previously also about the kind of efforts that have been made in different sectors in Pakistan and how the leadership or the individuals involved play a very key role in actually communicating or achieving that. And we know that the Prime Minister has tasked this responsibility to the former Foreign Minister, Mr. Bilawal, who's been quite integral also during this conflict in terms of how he's put forward that stance. What do you make of the composition of the delegation and of course its leadership?
Yeah, Sana, it is quite interesting the way Pakistan has formed its delegation and the way India seems to have actually tried to put it together. Of course, on Pakistani side, we have seen it being seamlessly created, right? Bilawal Bhutto's Zardari, People's Party, PML, and even PTI, all of them are working in tandem. So that is a clear signal that there is no problem on our side. But on Indian side, look what they did. They, the government actually, when actually in the woods, it asked the Congress party to give the list of candidates who can go. They left out Shashi Tharoor, right? They did not nominate him. But the guy is having a bonhomie with Narendra Modi. So what they did was they picked only one person out of that list that came from Congress, and then they superimposed Shashi Tharoor as well. So Shashi Tharoor is going as the head. And the problem again, Sana, I like Shashi Tharoor as an intellectual person, right? His books, his personal charm, all are great. But you cannot actually, hide from the fact that he was blackmailed. When his wife died, at that time there was an FIR on him, and continuously whenever he used to speak his mind, there would all of a sudden be summons from courts or summons from police station. So what does it tell you? If he goes abroad and he talks to Western countries, first of all, they should be trying to isolate him and ask him, are you okay? Do you want to defect? Do you want to come to our side? Of course, that won't happen, but then at least this is what I'm saying. But this delegation's nomination actually is a giveaway. It tells you that whatever national power India had a lot of things. Economic blackmail is there. They have actually, integrated themselves into American economy as well. And all of a sudden, when they were very angry with Donald Trump, and that actually speaks to how broken India is. Somebody is saving your soul and you are attacking him. But all of a sudden, America's rating, credit rating actually, is revised downwards. So similarly, in India's economic sector, they have been trying to wreak havoc. Then they have actually tried diplomacy, they have used military, they have used international connections as well. Nothing seems to be happening or working. That's why they're sending a delegation. But here's another very sad fact. I don't know whether it all of a sudden came into sharp focus, or it was something that was going on for quite some time and we were not paying attention. But within past few days, various videos of Indians abroad have surfaced, right? For example, a Californian medic woman, she is an Indian of Indian origin. She is perhaps fighting with a black woman, and continuously she is using the N-word, right? Similarly, there was this story that also surfaced of some bloke, Indian bloke who was Indian national actually, who was traveling from Abu Dhabi to Boston, and on the plane, what does he do? He looks at a white girl, he likes her, he goes to her and propositions her that I will pay you 5,000 when we reach Boston, let's get together. She snubs him, and then the Johnny goes back to his seat and starts pleasuring him in public eye, and he was fine. So this kind of mental sense of entitlement is actually killing India's image. And because this And all of this is India's prime ministers or their ruling parties give that they believe that they have arrived and they have every right to do whatever they want. This will also create a lot of problem, and I think in the revised image of India and the way world has actually reacted to Pakistan defeating India, that also speaks to how tired the world is, how annoying Indians have become, and that is going to show. Not regarding the weapon system, regarding overall situation, because India keeps on revising its story, they seem to have two problems. On one side, they haven't even admitted now that their planes were downed. And then, of course, there must be some damage, and they seem to actually paper over it. The biggest problem is that they keep on revising the story about Pakistan. For example, there were claims that Pakistan might have actually used nuclear capable missiles. What does that tell you? That the damage inflicted on them, although Pakistan is clear, world is clear, Pakistan did not actually go for the longer range missiles. But what does it tell you? It tells you that the damage was more extensive to India than India is letting on. And secondly, of course, they own talk about their planes and how much they have acquired. You must remember that image of Rajnath Singh actually worshipping. And it is their faith. I'm not going to critique that. Worshipping a Rafale, they call it Shastra Puja. But perhaps had you paid that much attention to the welfare of your soldiers, their morale would have been better. When you start Agniveer, when you start various other projects in which repeatedly you keep on putting your soldiers down or your pilots down, this is what is going to happen. People fight wars, Sana, weapons don't. And then the Indian side has also this meanness of spirit. And by the way, it shows on that night when the media had actually declared Pakistan conquered, I don't want to name the moderates or liberals who were celebrating at that time, because that shows who you are, how bigoted you are, right? With all that actually in picture, India's ability to communicate its message is going to land on deaf ear. The world will treat them well, of course. India has a lot of leverage. But after that, they are not going to listen to whatever is being said. Every person, India's plant, they are going to use will be exposed, because at this moment, all Five Eyes and other countries also are on the counterintelligence lookout, and how India might be messing with this system. So we have to wait. Our side will do whatever it has to, but Indian side won't get success.
Right. Ambassador Saab, I want your take on that too, because when we talk about, of course, the credibility of India and the way that the international community is looking at it, it's not just, of course, the rhetoric that is coming off, but also actual defense cooperation, actual tangible trade, which, of course, has also taken a hit, and we've seen that. But I want your take on whether or not that is also something that countries like the US, for example, who we've seen the leadership speak about trade deals and the kind of discussions that are happening, will also reconsider, particularly in terms of defense and security cooperations, and for India to be able to put forward a more credible stance on this matter.
Yeah, indeed. That is the strategic shift that has globally come. As I said, that India has been brought down from that status. When, imagine that time when under the Quad and several other alliances, they were like sort of setting up India as a counterpoise to China. But when India cannot even sort of match Pakistan's competence, how could they stay in front of China? So I think all that investment appeared to me, there is the rethinking, and there'll be again more rethinking. And in fact, what we see, at least one indication that was there when Trump called the Apple CEO to shift those 500 million investment from India to the US. And he said that I have spoken to Tim Cook, and I told him, do whatever you do with India, but don't have these 500. So that itself sends a signal to other potential investors who had seen India as a next protection house after the sanctions and changes that they have come in the wake of coming Trump in China. So I think that all shifting of the protection line to India seems to me that it will be reconsidered, and that honeymoon and that image of India definitely has gone down. There's such a unpredictable country, such a security-wise, such a unstable country, and also that I think is status as a country which can hold itself in terms of crisis, I think it's gone down. So I think the very fact that India has lost not only in the war, in the military front, but as we said, in the diplomatic front, in the public communication front, and obviously all these, they impact the markets. I think you must have read it that in those 4 days, Indian market lost $88 billion. All went in red. So I mean, one really doesn't want to predict, but just watch what happens to this so-called rising India. All that is gone down. So what I mean, I like to hazard a guess. First casualty would be Modi himself. Now it's time for him and his coterie of extremists to go and leave India and this region to peace. We really want peace in this region. We really want peace in the world. And Pakistan, India really are important countries, and they impact the issues of peace and war in the region and in the world. And I think the world has become very cautious. That's why you see so many diplomatic activity. The British Foreign Secretary was here. So all of them, they said, no, we want them to settle their issues. I think we did not touch about it because he was the one. He said that we want the two sides to sit together and discuss and settle the issue on Indus Water Treaty. So another very important thing, the message that has gone, dangerous message that has gone from India to the world, that now we have been again something which we have been fearing, that maybe in the future some very devilish adversary can use water as a weapon of war or as a weapon of revenge after Israel. So I think here we see when they put illegally put into water treaty under suspension, for which there's no provision. The world got the message that we are right there where a country of the so-called stature of India is threatening to use or actually use the water as a weapon. In fact, with that connected is that there is a judgment of the International Court of Justice where if water is used as a weapon, it is a crime against humanity. Not only use, but even threat of use is a crime. So I think India is at the verge of either committed. I think the legal people can look at it, but definitely it is a violation of the Geneva Convention on the law of the treaties. It is in violation of the laws governing the use of the water resources and several other United Nations treaties, as well as the International Court of Justice decisions. So I think apart from the war issue that we are talking, there is a whole issue of international law and a new element which has been, of course, there are several other criminal acts of commission and omission by India by sending drones onto the civilians and killing them at random without any justification. By itself becomes a case against it in the International Court of Justice. Why not? Tomorrow, if they persist on this aggressive tenor, I think Pakistan should consider to go. But we hope that either a better sense prevailed onto Modi and he changes his mind, which I don't see. He and his coterie of warmongers. Hopefully, the sensible people of India rise up against them. The opposition rises up against them, and they should rise against it. And they should call a quit to this fascist regime. And They should let India live in peace in the region with all the neighbors. Which neighbor they are friendly with? None of them. So I think here is the time India has to wake up. The India which is hopefully still remembers its founding father, Mr. Gandhi, remembers still Mr. Nehru, and all other
Absolutely.
great
That is
leaders.
integral and important, and we really hope that that happens. Thank you very much, Ambassador Saab, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. Faisal, very quickly, if you want to add something.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, as Ambassador Baluch has rightly pointed out, that of course India is thinking about shutting down waters of Pakistan. Of course, Pakistan's obviously, DGISPR, Lieutenant General Ahmad Sharif, he has rightly said so, that if India would do it again, of course it would be considered as an act of war, and if India wants war, we will give them a war that their next generations, they will be affected by it.
Right. Thank you very much, Faisal. Thank you, Farrukh, for joining us in the debate. As always, that's all that we have time for. We'll now see you tomorrow.